SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most iconic shows to ever hit television. This amazing cartoon has provided countless hilarious moments and iconic lines that have left lifelong memories in the minds of its millions of worldwide fans, including myself. Hey guys, it's JaxTown here and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to dive into the wonderful world of SpongeBob and talk about the best of the best in terms of the countless terrific episodes that the show has aired. Now, while it will be a challenge to narrow it down to this small of a number, I thought I would give my personal opinion of the 10 best episodes of SpongeBob to have ever been released. Other than the two movies, because I just felt like since they both came out in theaters that they are no longer considered a TV episode. And because it's just my opinion, this isn't the absolute top 10, so just take it with a grain of salt. Also, give me your opinion in the comments below on what your favorite episodes are. I'd love to hear them. But before we start, if you love sports, movies, TV shows, and or video games, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video comes out. I would really appreciate and love all your support, so without further ado, here are my top 10 best SpongeBob episodes of all time. Now, before we get into the top 10, I just feel like because there are so many great episodes, I should put some honorable mentions first, which include the following.
You may be an open book, SpongeBob, but I'm a bit more complicated than that. The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
I can't put a patty on a bun with lettuce, cheese, onions, tomatoes, ketchup, mustard, pickles, and top bun together in that order.
It's time.
It's the best day ever. It's the best day ever. When is the next bus to Bikini Bottom?
What?
The bus schedule, the next bus.
I can't understand your accent.
The next bus to Bikini Bottom.
Oh.
It's right, Squidward. Sea bears are no laughing matter. Why, once I met this guy who knew 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 this guy's cousin.
You're right!
Starting off this list at number 10, we have Graveyard Shift. Now, I just love the concept of this episode. SpongeBob and Squidward being forced to work all night by Mr. Krabs, Squidward understandably hating it, and SpongeBob predictably being enthusiastic about it. And this transitions into a series of jokes about the dangers that lurk outside in the mysterious Bikini Bottom night, or Squidward sharing the infamous and now iconic tale of the hash-slinging slasher to scare SpongeBob, and then with the great twist at the end where the slasher appears to actually show up, puts this episode into the top 10 for me. At number 9, we have Dunces and Dragons. Now, one of the most recently released episodes on this list, being released in 2006, Dunces and Dragons is an amazing episode of SpongeBob that takes you back into medieval times with medieval versions of all the characters we know and love. And it tells a great story about these unlikely heroes in SpongeBob and Patrick saving the world by taking down the evil Planktonomor. I'm glad that this episode was 30 minutes long instead of the usual 15, because it provides many more great moments, lines, and jokes. I just love how this episode does a great job of turning everything we know and love about SpongeBob, putting a medieval twist on it, and using it to give us an unforgettable and iconic episode of the Bob. Coming in at number 8, we have Christmas Who? You cannot have a great TV show without having a great Christmas episode, right, guys? I mean, this was by far the best of the multiple Christmas episodes of SpongeBob. I just love the plot about how Sandy is celebrating Christmas and tells SpongeBob about it, who has no idea about it, and he tells all of Bikini Bottom about it too, and they get to celebrate the holiday as an entire town for the first time. Well, except Squidward, who didn't believe in Santa Claus. Shame on him. Also, we got one of the best SpongeBob songs ever in this episode. I just also love how later on we see how Squidward is really a good guy on the inside as he becomes Santa Claus after the real one didn't show up. It's just a great episode to put you into the holiday mood and is a heartwarming tale that gives the great message that if you care for others and are kind to others, you will be rewarded in some way and be more loving and happy when you are doing these things.
Christmas feels like the very first Christmas to me.
Coming in at number 7, we have Franken Doodle. Now, while the plot of this episode may at first seem odd, SpongeBob and Patrick use a magic pencil to create a cartoony paper SpongeBob. Really? but it actually turns out to be genius. I just love how, even though this doodle looks like SpongeBob, it's really the anti-SpongeBob personality-wise, and the whole process of SpongeBob and Patrick trying to chase down and stop their creation from taking over Bikini Bottom makes for a hilariously awesome episode. I also thought that it was really creative how this magic pencil, quote-unquote, can really be a weapon because of the fact that it makes any drawing come to life. So overall, a really funny and creative episode of SpongeBob that is definitely worth being on this list. Next up at number 6, we have Wet Painters. I think this may be the funniest episode of all time. I mean, Wet Painters, while having a boring and kind of stupid plot at first about SpongeBob and Patrick painting the inside of Mr. Krabs' house, surprisingly results in so many hilarious and iconic lines and moments. I mean, seriously, I still laugh my butt off every time I see this episode. It's just that funny. Also, for some reason, some of the animations and facial expressions in this episode stand out and are funnier than most of the other episodes to me, which is just something I noticed, and it only adds to the hilarity. I mean, yeah, Wet Painters will always be among my favorite episodes of The Sponge.
Wait, SpongeBob, we're not cavemen. We have technology.
Coming in at number 5, we have Club SpongeBob. I think this episode, like Wet Painters, is one of the funniest episodes of all time, but it has an even better plot than Wet Painters, in my opinion, and packaged together with the hilarity makes for an even better episode. I mean, the plot is so ridiculous about how SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get stranded in the kelp forest after their treehouse gets mistakenly launched there by Squidward snapping a small branch connected to the house. But it is a great plot, and it turns out to be a great comedic survival episode. Now, while Squidward is surviving in a traditional way in the forest by hunting and gathering materials for shelter and warmth, SpongeBob and Patrick, on the other hand, just listen to what their magic conch shell says, and while it's stupid, it somehow helps them survive and thrive. So yeah, great jokes and moments mixed with an outlandish yet awesome plot puts Club SpongeBob into the top 5.
Can I have something to eat?
No.
At number 4, we have Krusty Krab training video. This episode's so unique, as the formatting of this episode is just so different from all the other episodes, because there's a narrator, and the narrator is telling the audience about what it takes to work at the Krusty Krab, and tells about the ins and outs of the restaurant. But man, there are so many great quotable moments and lines in this episode. I mean, yeah, you might lose some brain cells in this episode because of how stupid it is at times, but trust me, anytime you can spare less than 15 minutes to really laugh hard and have a good time watching this episode, do it, because Krusty Krab training video is an all-time classic and great episode.
Sounds like a lot of...
Hoopla!
It sounds like a lot of...
Hoopla!
Sounds like a...
Hoopla! Hoopla!
Coming in at number 3, we have Chocolate with Nuts. One of the most iconic episodes that people still quote and make memes about today. Chocolate with Nuts will go down in SpongeBob lore for its hilarity and super creative premise. In this one, SpongeBob and Patrick want to be entrepreneurs, so they set out to sell chocolate bars from door to door, and just every customer interaction in this episode is so funny. From the man who just yells, "Chocolate!" to the guy Patrick says, "I love you too," to the old lady and her even older mom who provide hilarious moments and lines. This episode also provides a surprisingly realistic lesson about business. If you want to sell, you have to be convincing and persuasive and make the customer feel the need to buy something. And it shows that advertisers will often stretch the truth to get there. So Chocolate with Nuts will go down in history for just how amazing of an episode overall it was.
Hello?
I love you.
Next up, at number 2, at the runner-up spot, we have Pizza Delivery. One of the first episodes of SpongeBob to ever air, Pizza Delivery even today remains in the conversation for the best SpongeBob episode ever. The plot? Simple. SpongeBob and Squidward have to deliver the first Krusty Krab pizza to a customer. But in classic SpongeBob fashion, a simple plot spirals into a series of outlandish occurrences that leave SpongeBob and Squidward stranded in the middle of nowhere, having to find their way back. I just think the interaction between SpongeBob and Squidward is so great in this episode, and there's some surprising character development as well between the two. Also, who could forget how hilarious this episode is? From the backing up, backing up line to the Krusty Krab pizza song, to the constant reference to the pioneers, to the impossible driving of a rock. Just so many iconic moments and a hilarious ending that sees Squidward stand up for SpongeBob by shoving the pizza into the customer's face after the customer rejects the pizza because SpongeBob forgot his drink that he never ordered. I just like how we see the good side of Squidward as well, and even though he's annoyed by SpongeBob, it shows in this episode that he still cares for the little guy and sees him as at least somewhat of a friend. So this is why Pizza Delivery is the runner-up for the best SpongeBob episode ever. So what is number one on this list, you might ask? Well,
Krusty Krab, yeah, 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 yeah. Pizza is the pizza, yeah, for you and me.
and last but definitely not least, coming in at the number one spot for the best SpongeBob episode is going to be Band Geeks. I just absolutely love this plot about how Squidward wants to prove his arch-rival Squilliam fancy son wrong by putting together a band and performing at the Bubble Bowl, which obviously is a knockoff of, you guessed it, the World Series. Just kidding, of course, the Super Bowl. And I just love how the band is composed of all the main SpongeBob characters and other lesser-known Bikini Bottomites as well. Also, who could forget all the unforgettable lines in this episode, as it probably is the most quoted episode of all time. I also love just how the band sucks so bad in the beginning that Squidward gives up on them, only for all of them to come together and surprise Squidward and Squilliam and the audience by putting on the most epic performance ever at the Bubble Bowl and singing, in my opinion, the best song in SpongeBob history. All in all, because Band Geeks just beautifully brings all the characters together to make an epic and hilarious episode, I would say, to me, without a doubt, Band Geeks is the greatest episode in the history of SpongeBob SquarePants.
It's the thrill of one more kill, the last one to fall. Who never sacrifice their will. Don't ever look back on the world closing in. And it's sweet, sweet, sweet victory. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more great videos in the future. Follow me on Instagram, which I will put in the description below, and I'll see you all in the next video.